welcome back to our course in college algebra. I'm Tom McNamara, the instructor for this class. In our last video, we discussed the concept of rate of change of a function. And we saw that was a generalization of the concept of slope. Slope is change in y over change in x. The rate of change is change in output over change in input. Now we're going to go one step further with the abstraction and talk about a difference quotient. Well, a difference quotient, look at what I've got up here. I've got two different input values to my function. So I'm finding f of x plus h and getting the output and subtracting f of x. So difference in outputs, and look here, the input here is x plus h. The input over here is x. The difference between those two inputs is h. Okay, so that difference quotient is a rate of change. Okay, now it looks a little complicated, but it's really not, provided you tackle this one step at a time. So when I'm tasked with simplifying a difference quotient, and those of you that go on to study calculus will deal with difference quotients all the time when you study derivatives. The first thing I would recommend that you do is compute f of x plus h, okay? Sit down and write down what that is. Now you know how to work with function notation, so finding f of x plus h shouldn't be a problem. So we're going to find f of x plus h, we're going to simplify that. Take away f of x. Well, how do I know to do that? The instructions up here say to do that. It says find f of x plus h, take away f of x. And then, of course, the last step would be divide by h. Let's do an example. Compute the difference quotient for f of x equals, let's take a quadratic one. Let's do x squared minus 2x plus 5. So x squared minus 2x plus 5. Okay, well, I'm going to take my own advice. I'm going to start by computing what f of x plus h actually is. Now, if you look back to our video on understanding function notation, you'll remember I encouraged you to think of these x's as blanks, like spaces. And whatever you put on the left-hand side automatically pops up in those blanks on the right-hand side. Okay, so once again, take these instructions literally. Math instructions have to be followed exactly the way they're written. X plus h squared means x plus h times x plus h. FOIL that out. And that will work out to be x squared plus 2xh plus h squared, right? You have to visualize it. X plus h times x plus h. First times first is x squared. Outside times outside is xh. Inside times inside is another xh. That's why we've got a 2 here. And then finally, last times last is h squared. So this expands out right there. Okay, now we have to deal with this part here. Okay, distribute. Don't forget to distribute the sign along with it. Okay, so each of these guys gets multiplied by a negative 2, and then we have a plus 5. Okay, so step 1 is complete. We wrote down what f of x plus h was. Notice I'm not even working on the fraction yet. Start with this part by itself, and you will avoid mistakes. Now, second thing, I'm looking at what I just wrote down. Take away f of x. Well, what is f of x? Well, it's x squared minus 2x plus 5. Take away the x squared. Take away the minus 2x. Take away the 5. So the numerator of my difference quotient is 2xh plus h squared minus 2h. The x squared, the negative 2x, and the 5 got subtracted because that's what the instructions are telling me to do. Find f of x plus h. Got it. Take away f of x. So take away the x squared. Take away the negative 2x. Take away the 5. Now let's look at what we're left with. Here's my numerator for my difference quotient. F of x plus h minus f of x. Well, we just figured out what that was. It's 2xh plus h squared minus 2h. We have to take this and divide by h. Notice in the numerator, every term is divisible by h. There is a common factor of h. I will factor out in h, and that h that I have factored out can cancel with the h in the denominator. So the simplified difference quotient for this problem is 2x plus h minus 2. That's the simplified difference quotient for this problem. I would highly recommend that you use these steps to simplify your difference quotients. Start by figuring out what f of x plus h actually is. Write that down separately. Use what you know about function notation to compute it. Then once you've done that, I usually just cross it out. Okay? When I'm taking f of x plus h and subtracting f of x, and then lastly divide by h. Okay? After you do step 2, a big hint is that for the functions that we're going to work with, every term should have an h. There should be a common factor of h. If there's stuff that doesn't have an h, probably an indication that you've made a mistake somewhere, so go back and check your arithmetic. Okay? So we got these 3 steps for dealing with a difference quotient.